$29 billion. That is how much Switzerland exports in watches every single year. $29 billion. From a country smaller than South Carolina. Now hold that number in your head. Now add this one. China produces between 30 and 40 million counterfeit Swiss watches every year, same period. Here is what the luxury industry does not want you to realize. The counterfeit problem is not the real problem. It is a smokescreen, and the fire behind it has been burning for 2 decades, fueled by Swiss money, Swiss machines, and Swiss mistakes. By the end of this video, you will understand 3 things. First, why the Swiss watch industry just lost a quarter of its most important market in 12 months. Second, why the counterfeit market is actually the decoy. And third, the single question that nobody in Geneva will answer on camera. Do not click off, because the answer to that question changes the value of every Swiss watch you see from this moment forward. Let me read you something that made me check my sources 3 times. Greater China, mainland plus Hong Kong. In 2023, that region was buying more than $5.5 billion worth of Swiss watches annually, the industry's single largest customer on planet Earth. By the end of 2024, that number had dropped nearly 40%. Not a bad quarter, not a seasonal adjustment. 40% in 1 year. Now watch what happens when you pull that thread. Swatch Group, Omega, Longines, Blancpain, Breguet, the same company that rescued Swiss watchmaking from total collapse in the 1980s. First half of 2024, operating profit collapsed 70%. By 2025, net profits had fallen nearly 90%. I read that number 7 times. I honestly thought it was a typo. It was not. Richemont, Vacheron Constantin, IWC Jaeger-LeCoultre. Greater China revenues down 27%. Girard-Perregaux and Ulysse Nardin became the first Swiss brands to formally ask the government for survival money. The Swiss government is now paying up to 80% of watchmaker salaries through taxpayer funds. And here is where it gets real. The component suppliers. The invisible workshops in the Jura Mountains that make dials, hands, escapement wheels. They are facing cancelled orders, deferred payments, silence from brands they have supplied for generations. 65,000 Swiss jobs, the country's 3rd largest export sector. And right now, executives are having conversations about survival timelines that nobody would have whispered 18 months ago. You might be thinking, okay, so counterfeits are destroying them. That is what they want you to think. The OECD published a report in 2025. Counterfeit Swiss watches generated an estimated $1.88 billion in global trade value. Swiss brands lost an estimated $1.08 billion in sales to counterfeits. That is 4.2% of total sector sales, approximately 2,500 jobs. Now pay close attention. Swiss Customs estimates 30 to 40 million counterfeit watches are produced annually. The entire legitimate Swiss industry produces 15 million units. The counterfeits outproduce the originals by at least 2 to 1, some years 3 to 1. That is not a counterfeit problem. That is market saturation. But here is where the story flips. The center of the counterfeit universe is the Pearl River Delta, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Dongguan. This is where Apple assembles iPhones, where Nike manufactures shoes, and where, over the past 2 decades, Swiss watch brands quietly outsourced component production. Sapphire crystals, case components, bracelet links, strap hardware. The Swiss brands needed capacity. The Chinese factories delivered precision, and in doing business together, the Swiss industry handed China something that cannot be taken back. The knowledge, the tooling, the supply relationships, the machinery. Everything required to build a Swiss watch without Switzerland. What happened next should not surprise anyone with a basic understanding of economics. Factories that produce sapphire crystals for a Swiss brand during the day shift can run an overnight shift producing identical unbranded crystals for replica syndicates. The machines do not change. The workers do not change. only the destination of the product changes. The Swiss-made designation requires that 60% of production costs are incurred in Switzerland. It says nothing about where the other 40% comes from. The industry inscribed its own vulnerability directly into the regulatory framework it depends on for protection. That is not a conspiracy. That is a boardroom oversight, or collective self-deception. I lean towards the latter. There are two names that watch collectors whisper in forums: Clean Factory VSF. These are not guys in a basement with a YouTube tutorial. They are vertically integrated production networks with dedicated research and development teams. Their sole purpose is reverse engineering Swiss watchmaking to the molecular level. Clean Factory became infamous for one thing: GMT Master 2 Pepsi bezel. The blue to red ceramic gradient that took Rolex years to perfect. Clean Factory replicated it using the same high-density Japanese ceramic that Rolex sources. The coating process is so accurate that macro photography cannot reliably distinguish the copy from the original. VSF built a dimensionally identical clone of the Rolex caliber 3235. The VS3235 tolerance is so tight that genuine Rolex replacement parts can be installed in the clone movement, and they function correctly. That last detail created something that should alarm every serious watch buyer: the Frankenwatch. A hybrid built from genuine Swiss components and high-quality Chinese clone parts. A watch that defeats authentication because parts of it are actually real. Let me tell you about a collector in Miami. He paid $11,000 for what he believed was an authenticated Submariner from a reputable grey market dealer. Rolex serviced it. Rolex confiscated it immediately. The movement was a clone. The dial and hands were genuine Rolex. The dealer had already disappeared. The collector lost everything. He had done nothing obviously wrong. He trusted a reputable dealer. That trust was worth exactly zero. Here is where the authentication story gets genuinely absurd. Weight used to be a reliable test. Replicas now use tungsten-loaded components calibrated to the exact gram weight of the genuine article. The laser-etched crown on the sapphire crystal at 6 o'clock, once considered foolproof, now replicated so precisely that authentication experts warn a crown that is too visible may actually indicate a fake. Because the genuine Rolex etching is designed to be nearly invisible without magnification. Think about that. The better the etching looks, the more suspicious you should be. Even serial number verification has been defeated. Some replicas now include NFC-enabled documentation that mimics official authentication systems when scanned. The entire toolkit that watch authentication relied on for 30 years has been comprehensively dismantled. So what did the Swiss industry do? Swiss and international intellectual property law cannot reach inside mainland China. Chinese courts do not enforce foreign judgments on matters involving domestic economic interests. The jurisdictional firewall is impenetrable. So rather than fight a battle they cannot win in China, the brands turned their legal guns on a market where they do have standing: the American secondary market. Rolex successfully argued in US federal court that modifying a genuine Rolex constitutes trademark infringement. Adding aftermarket diamonds, refinishing a dial, creates consumer confusion. The ruling made it legally risky to buy, sell, or modify a genuine Rolex in America if it has been altered in any way. The brands could not touch the counterfeiters in Guangzhou, so they created legal liability for their own customers in New York instead. I genuinely do not know how to describe that without using words I try to avoid on this channel. The certified pre-owned programs that followed are, depending on your perspective, either brilliant or cynical. Probably both. Rolex's certified pre-owned program generated over $600 million in revenue in 2025, growing at over 200% year over year. The program exists because grey market buyers are now genuinely terrified of buying a Frankenwatch. Watch what happened here. Rolex spent decades creating artificial scarcity and waitlist culture. That drove buyers to the grey market. The grey market became contaminated by counterfeits that Rolex cannot stop at the source. Rolex then launched a premium authentication service, charging 40% above comparable grey market prices. To solve the problem their own strategy created, they built the fire, lost control of it, and are now selling you the extinguisher at a significant markup. You have to admire the audacity. even if you cannot admire much else about it. Now, I want to be fair. The industry is trying. Several brands are developing blockchain-based authentication systems, digital product passports that follow a watch through its entire ownership history. Richemont has implemented NFC chips. Patek Philippe has reinforced its internal quality standard. These efforts are real. The direction is correct. But here is my honest assessment. They are building walls for a city that has already been invaded. The replica operations are not standing still. They are reverse engineering the authentication systems at the same pace they reverse engineered the watches. The industry is consistently one step behind, and the gap is not closing. China was not just the Swiss watch industry's largest market, it was the market that justified everything. The price increases, the wait lists, the secondary market premiums, the entire scarcity as luxury narrative. When Chinese buyers were purchasing Swiss watches at unprecedented volume, artificial scarcity felt like genuine exclusivity. When that demand collapsed, down 26% in 2024, down another 12% in 2025, the architecture built on it began to crack in ways that cannot be patched with a certified pre-owned program or a blockchain certificate. Secondary market prices for Rolex fell for 9 consecutive quarters through 2024. The proportion of Rolex models trading above retail dropped from 72% to 63% in a single year. The secondary market is not a fringe indicator. It is the most honest price signal in the entire watch industry. Because nobody on the secondary market is protecting a brand relationship. The youngest generation of watch buyers, the people the industry needs to survive the next 30 years. They grew up with information. They have watched the waitlist culture, the authorized dealer power dynamics, the secondary market theatre, and a growing number of them have simply decided the value proposition is manufactured rather than earned. Buying a high-quality Chinese replica is increasingly discussed in online communities not as fraud, but as a rational protest against a system built on manufactured exclusivity. Hundreds of thousands of people on Reddit and Discord are having this conversation openly. A raid on the Panda Buy warehouse in Hangzhou in April 2024 uncovered industrial-scale quantities of counterfeit luxury goods destined for Western buyers who had purchased them on Chinese domestic platforms. This is not a niche. It is a movement. Switzerland built an industry on a simple and powerful idea. Made in Switzerland meant something specific, something irreplaceable, something worth paying for. China spent 20 years studying exactly what that meant and has reproduced it, component by component. The quality gap that once made a genuine Swiss watch self-evidently superior now requires laboratory equipment and complete disassembly to reliably detect. The Swiss watch industry's worst nightmare is not the 30 to 40 million counterfeits produced in China every year, but the factories they trained, the machinery they funded, the supply chains they built. That is the question nobody in Geneva is answering clearly. And until they do, I am not sure the export numbers are going to tell a different story.